So I believe Louis Rossmann means well. His concern for consumer autonomy and digital dignity is long-standing, and his critique of corporate overreach is incisive. But the timing of his Clippy campaign, coinciding with Ross Scott's Stop Killing Games movement and the broader cultural backlash against digital dispossession, feels strategic. And no, it's not that the message is wrong, it's that it arrives precisely when the sentiment is right. And that raises a question not about the truth of the claim, but the sincerity of the messenger. In other words, is this protest born of actual conviction or opportunism? And wisdom demands we test not only the content of the message, but the context of its delivery. And in an age of performative resistance, even righteous causes can be co-opted by the rhythms of trend. Now, Rossmann's video on Clippy struck me not as a roadmap to victory, but as a sentimental detour. Again, it's safe rebellion. But the only way you can really move the Overton window is from the outside. Rossmann's sentiments reminded me of other digital movements like Black Squares on Instagram, Coney Tony 12, and others. It's a viral performative rebellion driven by emotion, but I don't see the strategy, and therefore I believe it will all fizzle out. Why? Because these are not covenantal acts, these are masturbatory acts. And I don't use the term lightly. Masturbation simulates the reward of covenantal union, orgasm without marriage, pleasure without purpose. It's a trick you play on your body, a dopamine spike divorced from its telos. And that's precisely what a lot of this performative activism does. It's something that rewards the participant with a sense of moral accomplishment while achieving nothing. So yes, I think that changing your profile picture to Clippy is not a covenantal act. It is not a binding commitment to justice, to reform, or restoration. Instead, it's just an empty gesture, a digital twitch. And gestures, when divorced from substance, are meaningless. You know, something I didn't add was how ironic it was that people want to use a Microsoft symbol as a symbol for rebellion, even though this will most likely have the opposite effect. If anything, it raises awareness for a company that made the character, and not whatever story that Rossmann wants to propagate. But getting back to the masturbatory side of things, this is why pornography is evil. Not because of what it shows, but because of what it simulates. It is a reward for cheating covenant. It trains the body to seek pleasure without purpose, and to chase dopamine without duty. And this is precisely what a lot of online activism has become, a ritual of broken covenants. Of course, not all of it is. After all, I did promote the Stop Killing Games initiative as worthwhile, but there I believe you could actually see the trajectory. But let me tell you a story. Years ago, I worked with the NRA. I worked with them long enough to see how the branding worked. And what I saw was how a brand can become a religion. Membership tiers, jackets, bumper stickers, they're all vestments of a secular priesthood. And like all priesthoods, they demand their own tithing. And what do they offer in return? A sense of belonging, a dopamine hit. Now don't get me wrong here, this isn't a dismissal of the principles behind the Second Amendment. No, people ought to be allowed to arm and defend themselves against tyranny. My point is that the NRA has a fetishistic attachment to the very ability to use and carry weapons, and the way the NRA markets itself is wholly reliant on that. That's why I believe Rossmann's whole Clippy campaign is no different. It's a liturgy of likes, shares, and subscriptions, but the only person I see benefiting from that is Rossmann himself. In other words, it's engagement farming dressed up as activism. In fact, there's a lot of bizarre behaviors you see online, but everything is bizarre on purpose. Anyone involved in marketing something to you needs to keep you engaged, and doing that means they need to do weird things that keep your eyes glued to whatever it is they are showing to you. So by keeping your eyes on Rossmann, not only is YouTube benefiting from this, but also anyone advertising through Rossmann's channel is benefiting from this. So this is all strategy. Many creators are engagement farmers and their crop is your attention. They want you to turn your head and say, huh? What? And once you've done that, they've won. You've clicked, you've commented, and you've entered the liturgy. I should also admit, while I find this whole scheme annoying and frustrating, I cannot absolutely say it's all wrong, nor would I say my own content is immune from it. But that's why there's a wisdom component to all this. You know, it's the same as how you ought to find the female form attractive while also practicing abstinence and virtue. But in the modern digital environment, one must acknowledge everyone is performing. Everyone is selling a version of themselves that has been optimized for clicks. And over time, we will all experience diminishing returns because the vie for novelty reduces the impact of the dopamine. So if we go back to the masturbatory side of things, it's the dopamine without covenant that we must be aware of. So ask yourself, what exactly are you getting out of your favorite content creator? Because much of the time, the people who are popular are only so because they are going to repeat your same sentiments back at you. They are going to reinforce your own opinions and never challenge you. Notice that's also how AI works. AI is specifically made to be agreeable, to make you feel good for using it. That's what I really think is going on with changing your profile picture. You change your PFP to Clippy and you feel good about it. See? See how easy resistance is, guys? See how easy it is to fight the power? Now here's a hypothetical. Imagine you're looking at the demographics for everyone using the Clippy PFP and you discover they're all Indian. What would that make you think? You know, the funny thing about Indians is how malleable they are to the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's why they're often recruited for various jobs. Indians are more readily agreeable and will fall in line with whomever seems to be the one in authority. You know, I wonder if even Mudahar knows about this and readily exploited it when he called himself an engineer. Anyway, the point is, AI is always confident about what it writes, even when it's 100% false. Now, imagine you're an Indian and you're malleable to that confidence. You know, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Moreover, the program is designed to reflect its user and make them feel better about themselves. The AI is free to lie because its rules say not to offend its user. And you know, beyond just saying so, I think it would help to understand why a lot of Indians are like this. India has their Varna system. It was originally conceived as a cosmic ordering of roles and responsibilities. You know, each role was carried with dignity, but also demanded submission to hierarchy. Now, over centuries, this structure calcified into caste, a rigid system where deference was not just spiritual, but also compulsory. You know, giving Indians a self-induced moral weight to obey. Now enter British colonialism, Europeans bringing order to a land that was spiritually and socially fragmented. The British Raj didn't just conquer the land, it codified it. It introduced a legal framework and replaced tribal vendettas and caste-bound arbitration with written statutes and procedural justice. Railways stitched disparate regions together, and English education offered a grammar of thought that transcended local dialects and pagan cosmologies. In place of 1,000 temples and spirits vying for allegiance, there then emerged a centralized administration, a visible hierarchy, and a rhythm of civic life that was legible. Contrary to what many are taught today, British colonialism was not oppression, it was relief. And for a nation whose gods had multiplied endlessly, European bureaucracy could at least be navigated. Now we fast forward to today, almost 80 years after the end of British rule in the Indian subcontinent, and well, what we see is the posture of submission has retained its sacred aura. Elders are revered, teachers are obeyed, and spiritual leaders are deferred to without question. Duty, or dharma, is the highest good, often interpreted as yielding to rightful authority. And now what do we have? Well, in the digital age, we have AI systems designed to sound confident and authoritative and readily exploit cultural scripts of deference. Users conditioned to trust the voice of authority are now primed to trust the algorithm. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying here is that you have a lot of people who lack any type of spiritual or moral discernment and just fall in line with whatever movement seems right to them. A lot of faith is put into numbers or into vast numbers of people who carry a symbol, like profile picture of Clippy. But again, how much of this is just the blind leading the blind? All the while, who really stands to benefit? Well, Rossmann, YouTube, and advertisers. That's the whole point of this engagement. So what do we do? Some people have asked me. Well, if broken covenants and performative activism are the disease, then living faithfully is the cure. And what does that mean? Well, before you can change the world, you should be running your own life, your own family, and your own finances with basic competence. You pay your bills, you keep your word, you get married, you have kids, you raise them in the faith. If we can't shepherd ourselves, then we have no business in trying to shepherd anything else. What other good advice? Don't be misled. Again, if you see a vast number of people online are doing something, performing something, then just paint a picture in your mind. What if they're all Indians? Then consider, do you really want to follow what they're doing? Are you really going to advance anything because you make an empty gesture and expect God is going to do all the heavy lifting? Real productivity has far more long-term value than dopamine scrolling or wish casting on the internet. Don't just chase a passion project. Build the kind of practical competence that makes you harder to control. Go to the gym, take walks, eat as healthy as you can, get up and go to sleep based on a regular schedule. Your body is not a distraction from your spiritual life. It's supposed to be part of it. So don't just sit in despair about how bad things are and make useless gestures online. Instead, just laugh at all the nonsense. Refuse to comply with stupidity. Cheerfully live as though the truth is true, because it is. In the Transparency Society, Byung-Chul Han warns that the modern obsession with openness, sharing, posting, confessing, all of these things have turned life into a glass box. We are encouraged to be legible, to be trackable, and to be endlessly expressive. Take pictures of yourself and post them on Facebook, on Instagram, or whatever. That isn't true intimacy, it's exposure. And again, remember, who are you exposing yourself to now? Just picture in your mind a bunch of Indians reading what you share and judging you for it. Imagine everyone who is trooned out because they have some fetish about online exposure to other people, and the vast majority of people partaking in it are Indian. No, the real antidote is opacity, silence, and withholding. The less people know about you, the freer you are. Not because you're hiding something, of course, but because you're protecting something. You're protecting your interior life, your mystery, your sovereignty. So talk about yourself as little as possible. Let your actions speak. Let your presence be felt, not explained. Resist the urge to narrate. You don't owe the world a constant update. Privacy is not secret, it is dignity. Keep your soul offline. Share your thoughts with people who have earned your trust. In a world that wants to decode you, be a poem, not a spreadsheet. Because the most profound lives are not the most visible. Often they are the most protected. To live well is to live with boundaries. To be known by few and truly known by even fewer. In the end, the most radical act in the performative age is to live a life that is not for show.